Hi, I'm Pittsburgh City Councilman Daniel Lavelle,
And I'm Councilman Reverend Ricky Burgess.
and welcome to Black Pittsburgh Matters. Black Pittsburgh Matters is a series of virtual town hall meetings affirming a citywide agenda that Black Pittsburgh does indeed matter. And what does it mean? It means that Black Pittsburgh Matters means Black Lives Matter, which is the protecting the health and safety of Black people. It means that Black communities matters. That means rebuilding and investing in Black communities. And it means that Black wealth matters, which means we must increase Black employment and entrepreneurship.
Now, the Black community has been disproportionately affected by the concurrent crises, the economic crisis and COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, race relations in a public health crisis. Normally, in times of crisis and great change, we'd be coming to you as the Black elected officials of Pittsburgh and having meetings across our city with our constituents, partners, and allies. Since we cannot do that safely in the current pandemic, we're using this media and platform to come to you in ways that we can, to talk about what we're doing, to discuss policy and legislation concerning Black Pittsburgh. These meetings will be available via Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, and the city's cable channel. You can contact or ask questions via the Black Pittsburgh Matters Facebook page, or you can email us at blackpghmatters@gmail.com. And through our live Facebook feed right now, you can ask us questions. Now, today's town hall meeting topic is police reform in Black Pittsburgh.
Both Rev and myself are indeed legislators, so we wanted to make sure the public was aware of recently passed legislation. Recently, working together, both Rev and I recently sponsored a number of police reform bills that recently passed City Council and was signed into law by the mayor. These 6 pieces of legislation include: 1, establishing a hiring freeze in the Bureau of Police. This legislation, which will defund the police recruitment class and first-year police officer line item in the Bureau's 2020 budget. The second bill requires the demilitarization of the police. This legislation bans the purchase of surplus U.S. military equipment and weapons by the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. The third piece is banning chokeholds. This forbids Pittsburgh police from using chokeholds when subduing citizens. The fourth one is establishing a duty to intervene. This legislation requires all police officers to step in and stop other police officers from using illegal or unnecessary force in any other violation of a person's constitutional rights. The fifth piece is establishing Stop the Violence Fund. This legislation requires the city to dedicate dollars equal to 10% of the police budget annually for funding evidence-based violence prevention social service programs. And then 6th and last one is placing a question on the fall ballot, which is this legislation will amend the Home Rule Charter to strengthen the Citizen Police Review Board. However, although those were recently passed, this work is not new to myself or Reverend Burgess. I can tell you Reverend Burgess began working on police reform matters prior to my even coming to City Council. And so, Rev, if you would also be willing to take a moment and talk about some of the work that has occurred prior to these most recent pieces of legislation.
Yeah, we worked hard to pass, back then it was called the Jordan Miles Reform Agenda, which was increased training, increased technology, and increased transparency. And those, and continuing today, we passed a number of police reform initiatives, including what was called the Pittsburgh Initiative to Reduce Crime, which is now called the Group Violence Initiative, that has reduced violent crime in Black communities. We've increased the use of cameras in police cars, cameras on officers, and cameras in the community. We brought to Pittsburgh the Shot Spotter gunshot detection system. If you shoot a gun, really, in almost a third now of the city, it automatically, that gunshot is detected within a few feet from the place and given to police in their cars. The Maryland Authority Assessment Model, which they say is the single biggest determinant way of reducing a domestic-related homicide. We stopped domestic-related homicide by 50% in the first couple of years we implemented the model. Every police officer is trained by it. We were fortunate enough to have become one of the first cities, and we helped to lead that, to bring We are the first cities to do the national initiative to build community trust, which led to a number of reforms, like putting the standard operating procedures online and to give training in intentional bias and procedural justice and racial reconciliation. And then, as you know, together, we've been working on the Stop the Violence Initiative. That's a steering committee based on a variety of city stakeholders to work together to provide community input and community programming to stop violent crime in the city of Pittsburgh. And so we've really, I believe, led the process combining effective social services with smart community-based policing. And that's why we've had the lowest incidents of violence in the last 5 years recently. I think it's been a good conversation, a good partnership rather. But I guess I was just thinking, Daniel, you know, we've had so much. What's your take on just all on the national protests of defunding the police? What's your take on the impact of all of that protesting?
So I think it's having a very positive impact, actually. I've been encouraged by the people that have been willing to protest over the last month, and if not more at this point. I've been really encouraged to see our white brothers and sisters actually coming out and protesting, even here locally in Pittsburgh. I've been encouraged by the amount of young people that have been coming out and sort of leading this charge, because it forces conversations and it forces us to take action. One of the most interesting parts to all of this is the conversations I've had to have with my children, who will turn on the news and sort of say, what is occurring? Why is that man being knelt on by the police? Why are they protesting here? Why are Black men dying? And it's just been a very sort of interesting, tough at times conversation to have, even here locally. I was asked to go to Freedom Corner to speak at a rally that was being held for Black men. And I took my son with me because my wife was doing other things with my daughter. So I took my son. And, you know, it was interesting for him to hear all the different speakers and sort of try to, in his own way, understand it. And at some point, after about an hour of just standing there, after one of the speakers, he said, "Okay, Daddy, I get it. We have to do better, and we have to stop the police from hurting us," right? And that was sort of his boiled down snippet of all of what is transpiring. But it's been interesting, and I think for us, and when you started talking about the work prior, I think the national protests have actually put us in a place in time where we can really, really focus in razor sharp on the work that we've already been planning to do anyway. It's a hard conversation to have, and many won't want to hear it. But the fact of the matter is, post Jordan Miles and post other tragic incidents here within the city over the last 10 years, our police force in many respects has fundamentally changed into a more modern police force, into one that does try to understand implicit bias. They go through that training. They've adopted Obama's modern day policing strategies. And so we are a different police force, but now we really have an opportunity to even go even deeper into our police force and do more on the preventive side. You mentioned that we're at a 5-year low for violent crime within our city of Pittsburgh, and that's due to the work of the guests that we'll have coming up shortly. But it's to be commended. And I think this moment in time will now allow us to really take resources and put it all towards preventive measures that really have nothing to do with policing.
Yeah, I think we have to do preventive measures, you know, such as the Group Violence Initiative and such as putting social workers. But I'm really, and as you know, we've talked personally about this. I think, though, if we do not rebuild Black communities, if we do not understand that the real problem that we face is that we've let Black communities deteriorate where the bulk of Black people live, work, worship. If those Black communities, if there's not significant investment in those communities, we cannot make real change. And so, although I think we've done, you know, major transformation of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police, the real question and the real challenge is how do we put, you know, millions and millions, billions of dollars into historic Black communities so that they can be transformed from communities of concentrated poverty into mixed income stable communities.
I couldn't agree more. You'll have to forgive me, but when you started speaking, I thought of a rap line, and I am one who grew up listening to rap. But a rapper, Talib Kweli, and I'll paraphrase him, said, "Blacks don't sell crack 'cause they like to see black smoke. Blacks sell crack because they're broke." And that's sort of the reality of what we're dealing with. Police are called into our communities because of the things that poverty allows them to happen, because of how people are responding to despair and the activities that flourish because of that. And so I agree that investing in business development, investing in rebuilding our Black commercial corridors, investing in affordable housing, all just becomes ever so critical, because all of that then provides a more wholesome environment to raise a child in, and thus the not needing the police to come as much.
And I'll resist the urge to talk to you about my DJ days and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Well, anyway, to give us a clear perspective on police reform and the Black community, we are to have three experts with us tonight. Reverend Glenn Grayson, pastor of Wesley Center AME Church and CEO of the Grayson Center, or the Center That Cares. We have Shatera Murphy, Assistant Director of Pittsburgh Public Safety Department, and Richard Garland, lecturer in the Public Health Department at the University of Pittsburgh. Welcome to Black Pittsburgh Matters.
Thank you.
So only because I'm looking at Reverend Grayson on one of his rooftops outside. I'll ask him a question, but it's really for everyone to respond to however they so feel. But I am curious of you all's reaction and or opinions of the defund the police movement.
Well, first, I'm glad to be on with y'all today. I am not a rapper or a DJ, and I'm not an expert. So nevertheless, I'm glad to join you just the same. There's no question that I think, first of all, I think the word itself is defund is scary because people have a different definition of what that means. But I think it really means it's looking at a budget and seeing how it could now be better used to better support the entire city. And I think that's what's been real important, that it's really not about taking away, it's about reallocating in a way with areas that makes better sense, especially, let's say, with assault weapons and things like that, reducing that budget in terms of realizing that there's plight and in our communities and how we reassess that. So I think if you look at the areas of where we're looking at how to better analyze and say, how do we fix this? I think that's why the direction is going in, and I'm ecstatic to be a part of it because it's such a needed endeavor in so many ways.
Anyone else?
I think it would be difficult to defund the police in the general term that everybody is saying. But when we talk about the way that we are policing in the 21st century, and then the public health approach that we're taking to crime prevention and to making things better in our communities, people look back at the Bureau and they say, we need better education in our communities. We need access to recs and facilities and things like that. And so they're automatically looking at the biggest budget, which is our police budget, and saying, how can we take some of this money, put it into our communities to make sure that we have safer and healthier communities for our residents to live in? And that money people are trying to take from the police budget.
I think I work with a segment of the population in our communities that we need assistance, and just the programs that I've been able to run. I went, and I was part of the problem at one time. I went to the problem for the solution, and it helped uplift many of the men and women that worked with me, worked in the community, changed the whole concept of what things that they used to be involved in, being positive members of society. When we talk about defunding the police. I mean, we have to look at it in a way that we we still got to build up our communities. If we build them up right, we won't need policing as much as we do now. So um, I'm caught in a conundrum to a degree. Even when I'm sitting on this task force, when we talk about use of force and accountability, uh, those things that we have to hold the police accountable for because they have to be at a higher level uh, if they're going to help us move this agenda. But I believe that there are people in the community that we can change a whole lot of things.
Richard, you and I go back 20 years doing this work together, right? From back in the times I was working at the jail and you were doing One Vision, One Life. I guess you and I are some of the old time workers in trying to stop violence. I'm curious. Do you think One Vision, One Life? I think it was successful. I think. What do we learn? Do you think? What do we learn? And does that what we did in the past, does that give us any kind of insight on what really is needed now in the present?
One of the things that I want to let you know is One Vision, One Life started at the Grayson Center at the church. Grayson. Me and him had that conversation when I first came to him. And I said, "Man, I'm going to these dudes. I think we can change. We can change the world. We can change the world if we give them some inspiration, realizing that they could change the community because people looked up to them." I mean, we went to the dudes that was hardcore, and they signed on, and even now, we have men and women that's coming out of these penitentiaries that want to help change the community. They want to give back. And what you've been fortunate enough with you, Reverend Burgess, you always believed in us. You believed in the whole aspect of us changing community norms. I mean, and I really didn't realize that we were taking a public health approach 20 years ago when we started One Vision, One Life. When we look at, we was trying to change community norms, we was changing identities. One Vision, One Life actually changed identities of people who used to be part of the problem. We made them part of the solution, right? And the thing that people want to look at me like I'm the one that's been successful, it's the men and women that I've worked with over all these years who made me who I am today. They believed in themselves and believed in changing their community. One thing that I realized that we didn't do enough of was training. I should have had more training, more, helping these guys, men and women, through the fires that we came through. I've been able to build a lot of relationships over the years. What's important is sustaining those relationships, and that's something that actually I learned some of that from Reverend Grayson. Realizing how important relationships are and keeping those relationships enable us to do a lot of the different things that we do. That's one of the things that I tell young people today. They must try to maintain some of the relationships that they meet people along the way. And that's what's been helping me deal with a lot of the things that I deal with today.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that you actually were started in Grayson Center. That's interesting. Given that that's the case, if Reverend Grayson, if you could talk about the work you're doing now with group violence intervention, because some of that One Vision, One Life, that idea sort of now lives on in a slightly new model. And I also think at some point we probably need to talk about rebranding that as well, because you're doing more than just group violence intervention. There's a lot of social service work component of this. There's a public health piece to this. But if you could talk about the work that you're doing, One, so that people could understand in part why we are at a five-time year low with violence, but also how you're reaching people, the brothers and sisters in need of help.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you, Richard, for just kind of shaping the history. And I appreciate that in a wonderful, deep way. Really, I didn't know Richard, but Mark Turner brought the two of us together and said, do you think this marriage can work? Richard has, you know, the relationships and the dreams and the hopes to transform a community of some guys and ladies who've been out in the street, who's ready for a change. And I partnered with him. I was really just, in many ways, the producer, but yet I learned a lot from him and partnered with him. The biggest thing was, like he indicated, relationship. Richard and his core of guys and young ladies had the relationships that the police department and the city officials did not have. And 20 years later, that's the sustainability of GBI, CARES REACH program. Some of those same relationships and some of those same guys, like Antoine Bailey, who leads our partnership, he came out of the relationship from Richard. So the work continues. Like, he birthed, the truth be told, people who transform their lives, who now have relationships and connections to transform other lives. And right now, we now have, because of funding from both of y'all, we now, in the whole city council who bought into the narrative, we now have at least 7, you know, outreach workers in those various areas that are hotspots doing the work on the ground. And now it's so much that it is now even, it overlapped into county. So that's a whole nother conversation. But the impact is relationships and connections, and those are the transformative pieces, the things that the police department know they can't do, they can't connect to, but they look to us to make those connections, to diffuse. And so, yes, the stats are down in 5 years, but they're really down out of relationships that, you know, the numbers are still too high for me, but I know from my gut they will be greater if our team, and there are several teams out there, weren't on the grounds diffusing. We have interrupters who may still be a little out there a bit, but they're able to get to some of these dudes and people and squash something. And our statistics on homicides are actually lower because of that impact. And Satara, who partners with us, can tell you best, you know, every day how we try to impact and make a difference and change the narrative, which leads into why, you know, CARES works so hard on being proactive, trying to diffuse on a younger age those same young people by giving, again, opportunities and jobs and a chance. Today, when our 5 young people that we literally took to the community kitchen went for their training to learn a skill that will feed them for life, it just warmed my heart, because that's the change we have. They become stronger, productive citizens with a living wage to support themselves and their families. And so hopefully when they graduate, they will become part of maybe my team of the first crew that will work in the Kids Community Care Cafe. And so that's the continued connecting of all these pieces. And that's kind of what Richard has been trying to do, has been doing from inception, of making those relationships, connections, and opportunities. And so when we talk about, you know, shifting funds, that's when it's important that we say, what makes sense? If we can shift funds to make a community stronger, we won't need it won't be as much violence or homicides, and we won't need as many police.
And as you know, we've done this on a shoestring budget, right? We have guys that are doing this part-time. I'm a big fan and advocate that we need full-time outreach workers, because the work is 24 hours and they need to be freed up to be able to go to a place when something is wrong, or even doing the preventative work. And so I will be advocating and pushing that we know this works. Let's invest in it. Our money is in the city, our budgets and our spending is a sign of our priority. And if saving Black lives is a priority, then we will fully fund this sort of initiative. Satara, what do you think? You're from public safety perspective, having these programs, having these social service programs like social workers embedded with police officers, group violence initiative, diversion programs. Do you think these programs are going to be effective?
I do think that they are going to be effective. I mean, especially GVI has already proven itself to be effective. You all touched upon the stats several times since we've been together this evening. We, again, tapping into that public approach to gun violence, violence prevention. We want to make sure that we're changing behaviors in the community without the impact and without the threat of law enforcement. So as Reverend Grayson was talking about, making sure that there's access to food, making sure that there's access to resources, making sure that there's access to employment, the list goes on. All of these things need to be embedded and incorporated and brought into our communities so that we reduce that risk of contact with law enforcement. And so that's what this is all about. We do need to expand this citywide. We've had those conversations internally. Now we're having them publicly, just about how effective we could be if we were to expand this. And then especially looking into our diversion programs. We have a behavioral health program that we're now working on. We're having social workers out with our officers. We do a lot of things in the space of overdose and making sure that, you know, we're just taking care of things in that area. So we do a lot of behavioral health and public health things within public safety. Our officers are not equipped to do that. That's not in their training, and nor did they sign up to be police officers to do that. So we need to make sure that we equip them with the resources and the people and whatever programs that are associated with that so that they can do their jobs better and take care of some of these situations that they encounter that are not necessarily crime related.
So then, Shatera, I have two questions for you then, I guess. One is from a budgetary standpoint, because I agree with Reverend Burgess, this has been a shoestring budget and we need to fund it at full scale and capacity to do citywide. So I'm just curious your thoughts on what that would look like from a citywide budgetary impact. As you know, we will soon be going into our budget session this year for City Council. And I believe this should be a priority. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And then I'll ask you the second question.
If we are going to expand this, and I'll talk about just people first and then program cost second, to expand GVI, and that's to have social workers or crisis intervention specialists, social service coordinators, elite program coordinator, enough outreach workers, enough interrupters to expand that citywide, meaning that we have bodies in every single police zone. There are 6 zones. That's about $1.7 million. Now, to get into programming cost for all 6 zones, we're looking at anywhere between $100,000 to $150,000 in addition to the $1.7 million.
So let's round it up to an even $2 million.
$2 million.
Okay.
To structure this citywide.
Okay. My second question. Go ahead.
So, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say anything. You know, since now I'm at the Graduate School of Public Health, you know, I pay attention to the numbers. You know, in the last couple of years, the county has led in homicides. So we've been really doing good work. And I know Reverend Burgess, and actually you as well, Councilman Lavelle, that you've heard me talk about that we have to do this countywide. It can't be done because now we have more homicides in Allegheny County right now. And even though that they're trying to start different things there, and we have to look at Allegheny and Pittsburgh the same. And those resources are needed. That was one of the things that always hampered me at One Vision, One Life, was that I couldn't pay a guy the type of money that he needed to really live on, you know, because, you know, I was giving dudes only $1,000 a month, some of them when I first started One Vision, and they was doing it out of their heart. But you know that they needed, you know, they wanted to do this full time, but they had to go and other people had to go get other jobs and things like that. So I really appreciate hearing you, Shatera, and Councilman Lavelle talk about paying people for this, you know, because it is a full-time job. Being on call for 24/7, that is something that outreach workers are and the interrupters. Even I'm watching my gunshot wound victims that I see in the trauma units. More and more gunshot wound victims are happening in the county, in the county communities. So we need to pay attention to some of those things. But I appreciate y'all too doing this. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up.
So the county does have the Office of Violence Prevention, and we've been partnering with them resource-wise. So anything that we have, trainings and things like that, we offer that to the Office of Violence Prevention that the county has. That office is run by Ross Watson. I know that they are doing cure violence, but only in Wilkinsburg, and that's just budget restrictions. They were able to get some grant money to start that. But I do agree with you, Professor Garland. We do need to focus on some things that are in the county. And I hope that the county will join us at some point in this conversation and how we can be more collaborative, because we've seen, you know, the influx of violence, how it flows through, you know, the McKees Rocks into the West End, weaves in and out of Wilkinsburg and Penn Hills, the Rankin and Swissville area. So we all are connected. It's just that we're working out of two different resource pots, if you will.
Right. So if I could make one follow-up question to that, Shatira. You mentioned the county has an Office of Violence Prevention. The city does not. However, we have a number of violence prevention initiatives.
Yes.
Do you think it would make sense within our public safety department to actually create one singular Office of Violence Prevention that could then coordinate all these various initiatives?
I think that would be an excellent idea. I think it's needed and it's necessary, because we have so many violence prevention, violence reduction, all of those related initiatives, and they're all housed in different places. So we have some within the Bureau of Police. We have some on the public safety admin side, some pieces in the mayor's office. You all in council, you know, you have your parts in this piece as well. And so if we could nestle that all into one office, I think we could do a better job of actually tracking the initiatives, seeing how effective they are. We do a better job at evaluating ourselves and reassessing strategies when needed if we had everything in one place.
Yeah, when we first brought this initiative to the city, I think the first funding was something like $300,000. And, you know, the police budget is, $150 million a year, something like that. And when we first started having this conversation, other council people would drill down to really be, I thought, petty about this little bit of money. I have never seen, I've been on council now, I'm in my 13th year. I have not seen one budget request by public safety or the Pittsburgh Police Department ever refused. In fact, we have council people who will argue that what we need is more officers, which actually means more white officers, because we disproportionately hire white people. And that's a whole different conversation. But in my mind, and I said that then, what is the value of a Black life, right? We know this program will stop Black lives from being lost. But in many people, those lives are not worth the money, right? They'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars to add more police officers or to give them more equipment, but they don't want to spend the money on preventative programs that keep Black lives alive. And so that's, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but that's something I've argued over the years, that we have to put money into prevention. And I'm grateful for the activists and their work in Pittsburgh and across the country, because I think now we're really having that serious conversation. Reverend Grayson, you were part of a group of pastors who sent a letter to the mayor and to the city asking for various reforms. Talk about those requests. Have they been made? Have they been met? Or just sort of from the pastor's heart, tell me kind of your view of kind of what needs to now happen to improve the relationship between the Black community and the Bureau.
So I believe that the mayor and the county executive received several proposals, and from faith-based, from other organizations, and I think overall, give or take, they all mirror each other. So if you all I think we all see the same. We all see the same issues that are real in terms of how we can take funds and and reallocate in a way that will indeed, we believe, save Black lives. And that's the bottom line. I think the death of George Floyd, where we were all kind of quarantined and forced to watch a Black man die for 9 minutes in front of our faces, gave birth to another level of this movement, that Black Lives Matter, which caused a lot of hearts to finally melt for the first time, for people to see some level of, yeah, this is crazy. It is real. It is different. I know we've been singing the scenario, all lives matter, but this is, I can finally understand what African Americans and people brown and Black have been talking about, because I can for the first time feel it. I'm saying all to say that if we look at the list of demands that were sent in probably from a number of entities, from folks in the movement to the faith-based, they all list education, they all list support of after-school program, they all list better just opportunities. And so I think that because you have such, and you like history, or you like to be able to analyze, you have such a concise list of, give or take, consistent demands or requests, that's a better word. It shouldn't be hard to figure out how we, on behalf of us, the most livable city for not all, and it's crazy that we can still make a list as the most livable city in terms of coming here, in terms of home values, in terms of, but yet, you know, we still struggle so much as an African American community, and so we really need to dig into those requests, or collectively, the panel, the board that's been assembled by the mayor, and really say, let's seriously address these issues and put some dollars to it that will transform and make a difference, that we also concur and live out that Black Pittsburgh lives matter.
So we talk about taking those funds and, you know, those dollars and reinvesting them in the community. I agree with Professor Garland in some sense that, you know, I am kind of torn, because I know how much it costs to effectively run the Bureau. The cost of training is ridiculous. And it's only because we go above and beyond the state minimum. So you can't become a Pittsburgh police officer in a week. Like, you can go to some other departments within the county, you can train for a week and now you're a police officer. The expectations are different. The training requirements are different. We are well above the state minimum on what we require of our officers. Technology, we all know how much technology costs, from our body-worn cameras to the shot spotter technology, to making sure that we enhance and improve that technology, you know, when we have the opportunity to do so. And I believe that everyone will agree that we need those body-worn cameras. And so when we are talking about, you know, looking at the police budget, what things specifically are we looking at? There is the Office of Community Engagement, where we need staff, you know, in that office. They do a lot of work in our community, a lot of good work in our community. I feel like we don't do a good enough job of telling the story of our officers who are out there actually doing the good work, and our admin staff that support them. But there are some pieces of that police budget that need to remain in order for us to stay above that state minimum, because then we will be evaluated and assessed similar to some of the other police departments and the municipalities and townships around here.
I concur, but I last week, many of the GBI groups went to I'll even say zone 2, and we were able to capture first shift going off and coming back, and second shift coming on. And I don't want to really deal right now if diversity is an issue, but on first shift, there was one African-American male who was part of first shift at a predominantly Black zone, and one female. And on second shift, there were 2 Hispanics and 2 females on second shift. And we have to deal with diversity, because diversity plays a major, so I'm not saying we don't need the most trained police officers as ever, but we have to, just in diversity, a balance of diversity, that's a training that's not on paper. That's a training that you can't learn in school. When you ride with I believe if you ride with an officer of a different color, a different sex, a different background, both of you grow. And that has to happen without a sense of decree. That needs to happen. The diversity is you know, because we our language is sometimes different. We're not, sometimes we move with our hands, and we're not, that means I don't have a gun. It means that I'm very, you know, I speak with my hands at the same time. That's kind of my culture, who I am. And so it's just little things that pile up. And I just think, you know, if not, I think we can find a way to divert enough funds to build some other areas, as well as being intentional about the next class. A fight we've been having since Penn's been around for almost 20 years.
I do want to put something out there. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for this. I guess we'll figure that out tomorrow or tonight. But we have most of our Black officers will be retiring soon. I mean, they're eligible. Let me correct myself. They're eligible for retirement soon. And so with us stopping some training classes, you know, obviously we won't be having any more diverse candidates coming in for some time. And so, you know, to my Director Hisrick's credit, he has been working on ways to get rid of some of those barriers that may have stopped some diverse candidates from being able to come and be a police officer with the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. But we do need to look at diversity, and we need to look at how everything that we are putting on the table today, saying we need to change this about the Bureau and that about the Bureau. What are the long-term and the short-term effects of that? And then making sure that we have some strategies in place so that we don't go backwards. And so a lot of people are throwing out a lot of things, but we need to just
So let me, first of all, as you know, I work closely with Chief Schubert and Director Hisrich, and they are great men of integrity and honor. I have the highest amount of confidence in them and their leadership. They have transformed the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police since I've been on council, and this is the best police force that we've had since I've been in office. However, the truth of it is 90% of the money in public safety goes to salaries. If we're serious about reallocating money, there's only one way to do it, and that is by not hiring new officers. I believe that the Pittsburgh officers should be higher paid. I've said that before. I think if you put your life on the line, you need to be compensated. And so I'm in favor of even higher salaries, but I think simply having more officers does not make us safe. The only way, and we can't fire officers because of state law and because of the collective bargaining agreement. The only way that we can seriously reduce the budget of police, there is no other way, is to stop hiring new officers. And because we know officers retire, we will, over just a few years, get to a right sizing. And so I think we need to think about resizing the police, which means less officers, certainly highly trained, hopefully even better paid, but we need less officers and more social service programming. And the only way we can do that is by once you hire a new officer, you're committing $120,000 a year when you take in training and benefits. And so I am a fan of reducing the total number of police officers.
We got to diversify it first before we stop hiring. We got, because those officers who have, because of Sansa decree, are at retirement eligibility, and they're retiring on a rapid level. Again, I just talked about a shift where now at that particular shift, those who aren't leaving, one African American male and one female. Second shift was 2 Hispanic or Asian officers and 2 females. We got to diversify before we stop hiring. We have to do some, and I know it's not, we have to do some diversity balance, or else it does play a role in the bigger picture. That's just my.
Let me say this though. I agree with you. When we talk about diversity, listen, it's a known fact. 20 years ago, we could ask a kid in middle school, what do they want to do when they grow up? Most of the kids would say, I want to be a police officer, right? You know, today, we ask a middle school kid about being, what do they want to do when they grow up? They're not saying to be a police officer. You know, how many African Americans are really applying to go into the police force right now? You know, and I know over the years that I've been working that they even came to us with applications for people. They were looking to try to hire more African Americans on the police force. Many African Americans are not coming to take that job as a police officer. Now that's an issue. That's a true issue. So what do we do? What do we do about it? We still have to do a lot of opening. You have events where people come to become police officers, things like that. I agree with you though. Also, Reverend Burgess, when you're talking about scaling it down, since people are retiring. I would love to see more African American and Latino police officers on the force, both men and women. Who can go into the communities. When we talk about this de-escalation, just because of the color of their skin, their ethnicity, they can de-escalate some situations that a white officer can't. So diversity is a huge issue when it comes to this police force and even some of the outlying communities. But there's not a whole lot of folks, African American descent, wanting to be a police officer today.
Thank you very much. It seems that we have some questions from our viewers who are and our town hall participants. And so we're going to go to, we have Micah Campbell Smith, who is the person who is coordinating this town hall meeting and all the ones we've been doing. And Micah, is there some questions that have come from the Facebook Live page or from our email?
Yes, we've had a few questions this session. The first, Benita asked, how is Pittsburgh allocating and welcoming criminal justice opportunities to young Black males and females to become the president, politicians, judges, lawyers, police officers, corrections, and medical service workers, instead of being the victims? If white males can become police officers, so can Black males. Money cannot always be the issue.
We do have the CTE training program in Westinghouse where you can get trained on different things, fire, police, and EMS related. So we are incorporating that in curriculum within Pittsburgh Public Schools so that we can make sure that that exposure is there.
And there's also Vibrant Pittsburgh that does a lot of things to welcome diversity. But to be honest with you, it's going to take change all across our city, right? The institutions, the city, we're all going to have to make young Black people feel that they count. And again, the way you do that is by investing in them so the communities they live in don't look like, third world countries. That the amenities, it's a shame that in many of our Black communities, there are no drugstores, there are no grocery stores, there are no real food stores, there are no shoe stores. We've allowed, because of institutional racism, we've allowed these communities to become, isolated communities of poverty, of crime, and of hopelessness. And I really believe if we're serious about making young people feel that they count, then let's go and change their communities, their schools. Let's give them recreation, all the services, amenities that they and their families deserve.
There's also a lack of civic education. People don't know what it takes to become elected official. They don't even know what elected officials do. And, there are some community groups that pride themselves on, educating the community on their civic rights, what their elected officials do, what does it mean to vote, how do you become an elected official, things of that nature, but that is missing from the curriculum. So our kids don't even know what they can become because they're not exposed to that information anymore. The career days have been removed. So it's not even like, you all or our police, fire, EMS folks, our mayors or other elected officials can come back into the schools like they used to and give these kids an idea of what they can become. We've in a sense, and the education system has failed our kids. And I'm not going to go on my tangent about that, but you know, when the question is stated, how do these kids know that they can become these things, and how do they become these things? We have to let them know.
And that's why after school programs are important. So if it's missing in the school system, if it's missing in the system as a city, it's our responsibility. Like they did in the old days in the basement of churches, we became the educator of our people, and we learned. And so not just mine, but there's so many who are doing just that exposure because they don't see it firsthand. And that's one reason why, you know, they have a distaste for cops, because they've had such bad experiences. So it's hard again sometimes to sell that. But I think we still can tell that story, because we have a young lady from my program who's finished her 60 hours at least at Lincoln. She wants to be a police officer, and so I went online. We grabbed the book for her, so she's studying. So if the opportunity opens again, she can jump right into it. And so those are examples of we try to find you where you are and encourage you to get to your next level and whatever that takes. So if you say, I want to be an engineer, I just don't hold a word. I will help you do the research to say, okay, this is what it takes, a 4-year degree, then it takes a master's, a graduate degree, and so forth. So it's more than the talk. It's just more than talk. It's trying to walk our young people through it. And we have to do a better job. The churches, community, you know, after school programs, what's not taught in the schools must be taught at home and in our other organizations to make it happen.
Micah?
Yes. The next question we got was from Jamila. She asked, in what ways can ex-offenders get involved to help in the community? How can we volunteer, and what are the qualifications?
Richard?
I actually starting a reentry project for men and women coming out of the state penitentiaries. We doing an apprenticeship readiness training with, it's going to be a 6-week course. But we also have other partners. We have Bidwell, who people who are interested in culinary and horticulture. We have UPMC, folks who are interested in culinary and environmental stuff. We have Max, that's a manufacturing assistance center out in 7800 Susquehanna. That's green construction. And then I have Operation Better Block, which is helping with housing. So there are opportunities. There's a couple other programs that I know of. The Foundation of Hope, that's a diversion program where they're working with juveniles right now, trying to divert them out of the criminal justice system. I know Kathy Elliott, who's doing Gwen's Girls. She's working with young ladies, and of course, what Reverend Grayson is doing in the group. You know, many guys coming out of the penitentiary, they have to be kind of patient. You know, this instant gratification, nothing's gonna come overnight. They had to work at this. You know, I've been fortunate since I've been here in Pittsburgh that I came out of the penitentiary and was able to get in the positions that I've been in. And me even being at the university right now, it's been a long road, but this reentry project is something that I've been wanting to do since I stepped out of the penitentiary. Was always to reach back into the penitentiary for guys. I believe that we can change the narrative. We can change society and the way they look at formerly incarcerated folks. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of different groups. ACAR, United States Attorney's Office is trying to do some things. Goodwill. So there's quite a few different organizations out here that's doing some good stuff. But we have to go look for it, and we have to you know, embed ourselves in the process. Be part of the solution. Okay.
Micah?
Professor Garland, there is a follow-up question, a few follow-up questions. how do people with criminal convictions get this information? Are they given this info just as they are released? And just some follow-ups, a little bit more information about the housing place. And yeah, that was all for Professor Garland.
So we have been going into the, we just did a presentation over at Renewal and Gateway Braddock. We're looking to do some more in the other renewal centers to talk to the men that are already home. We originally wanted to start in the penitentiary before guys came home. But we are in contact with the DOC right now, hoping to go into the other renewals. And I'm also in contact with parole. Hopefully their parole officers will get them the information. We just sent them packets. And your second question was, sister?
They were asking for more about the housing.
The housing is, OBB has invested in some houses in Homewood that we can hopefully help men and women who is coming home if they can't, especially if they can't go into a housing community, because if you have a felony, you can't go back into the housing community. Although they have lightened that, but you have to go through the appeal process, and it depends on how long ago the event happened, that people can't get into a housing community if that's where their loved ones are. But there are different housing programs, actually through the Department of Human Services. I can give you my information, or you can give them my information.
Right, they were looking for a website if there's information to volunteer to help. Or some sort of information about it.
I will. We are actually developing a website at Pitt. The program is called Reimagining Reentry.
Okay.
And I will get. You know what? I will get it to you and others.
Yeah, we'll post it on our We'll put it on the Black Pittsburgh Matters Facebook page.
Great.
Okay. Got it. And Reverend Grayson, there was another question asking, how can we get information to the school, and which church is offering these sorts of programs that you were discussing earlier?
So I speak mostly of Wesley Center, which has been on the forefront for decades, way before Reverend Grayson. But again, we have the Senator Cares program that's been active for over 21 years. Again, and just meeting our young people where they are and trying to take them to the next level. We do college tours, we do college track, and we've taken them to 5 different countries in terms of exposure. During COVID-19, we are a hands-on organization. We had 3 schools. We had African-American kids. We had to go back and pick up because they didn't have funds to get them back here. 1 or 2 are homeless, find homes for them. So those are kind of things we do. We're ecstatic now about the proposal that will be official tomorrow of opening up a coffee shop for social entrepreneurship. And so we're excited about that. And again, we look at some of the voids. We know that housing is a piece, and we hope down the road, I want to jump the gun, that we hope to have transitional housing for males and females 18 through 25 coming online by next year. And so we're conscious because we're on the ground of how we make a difference. We had a phenomenal safe summer with our summer program. We did 2 different unique things. We had a group of kids doing entrepreneurship where they started a business while their 6-week training, and they sold their business and their ideas for the last week, and they sold out of their different businesses they established. As well as the most exciting piece is we trained a group of 15 young people as Gen Tech technicians. So they were trained with technology to slow down and help mom, grandma, auntie, and the lady next down the block navigate just some level of technology to survive. Right now, in order to get a haircut, even at my local barbershop, you have to go online. And if you don't know how to go online and to register to log in for a haircut, you can't get a haircut. And so it may sound simple, but it's the way it is the world. And so we try to be conscious of that at the Center that Cares. And so we're excited that we hope that Gen Tech Mobile will actually go throughout the community. And so we're not the only one doing those things, but we're proud that we're conscious of some of the needs. We do a good assessment of what's needed. We're really partnering with the Back to Relationship with Little League football teams, with GBI, with some on the ground folks who know how to impact, know how to get into these homes, know how to diffuse a situation. And that's kind of what we do. So I'm grateful for the many hats that I wear through the church and through CARES, but that's kind of who we are.
Thank you. And I think there are a few more questions. They're pouring in. We have a few questions about people coming home with colorful backgrounds. Someone has said that there are 4 places women with colorful backgrounds can go to get job interview clothing. How can funding go into places for men with colorful backgrounds to get assistance for job interview clothing? And they were also wondering what happens to the fees and fines for people coming home with colorful backgrounds. Where does the money go? And could the money be redirected to men and women returning in our communities?
You know, I think that there's a fund that might be at the Pittsburgh Foundation or through Travelers Aid that might have something to do with helping with fines. I know Representative Gainey and Jake Wheatley, they were doing something with PennDOT, helping with PennDOT, helping get some of those fines. What's the word I'm looking for?
The expungement workshops.
Yeah.
They did expungement workshops, and they also did where that they released some of the fines that some people might have that might be holding them up. You know, none of this stuff that I'm talking about happens overnight. And see, that's one of the things that a lot of men and women don't realize. They think that it has to happen just like that. It's not. They have to put in work in order to get this done. There's bread and butter licenses for people that they can get a bread and butter license that they can go back and forth to work. There's Travelers Aid helps out with getting a hoopty. You know, if you need a hoopty to get to work. But it's something that you have to apply for. You have to apply yourself to, and go to these programs. You know, a lot of people, when they get out, as soon as one door is shut in their face, you know, they give up. You know, and I always use references that when you was in the game, you either went over top of it, around it, or through it to get something done. They had to have the same kind of initiative going after a job, going after getting things so that they can get on the right track. You know, and I understand there's a lot of doors that's been shut in my face when I first came home. You know, but I was fortunate enough that people believed in me, and I came during the time that I kept at it. And that's what they had to do. They had to go at it with that same tenacity. Nobody's gonna give them anything, you know. And that, you know, I'm just being, I know that's being kind of blunt, but that's what the world that we live in.
And sorry.
One of the other places I would recommend, one of our colleagues, DeWitt Walton, runs the A. Philip Randolph Institute, and they will often work with a lot of ex-offenders, a lot of individuals who have colorful backgrounds, and they will provide them stipends, they'll provide them training, and they will help with food and also access to resources that Mr. Garland is speaking towards. So I would also recommend looking into that program.
Yep.
And again, the Grayson Foundation does a tie for every guy each year, but we also throughout the year have ties and shirts and suits that we, you know, during that event and throughout the year that we try to keep in stock. And so there are, you know, not every door, but there are a lot of doors, again, like Richard said, if you keep on knocking, one will open, and you have to be persistent and insistent. But there are a lot of entities who are, on a low strings budget, tries to do their part. A lot of churches, again, go second mile. The second mile don't get credit a lot of times, but there are a lot of ways of entities who are out there throughout all of Pittsburgh making a difference and trying to make lives better for people of color, especially with colorful backgrounds. It does exist.
Thank you. The next question was, how are we dealing with men and women with mental health? What are we doing to address mental health in the Black community? And how is the information that you're talking about getting out to elderly people or people without internet access, as you've spoken about? Yeah, we'll start with that one. We have a lot coming through. I'll start with that one.
Well, mental health is a major issue in the Black community. Before I was a council person, I spent a lot of my time in social services, providing after school programming, doing reintegration programs, being in the jails, doing education programs, and running outpatient clinics for mental health. And so there are mental health opportunities, counseling, such as the Crisis Center on Braddock Avenue in the Point Breeze area, which actually supports the whole county. But we need a lot more community-based mental health services, right? And we need to integrate, where we need, as Reverend Grayson would tell you, we need pastors and churches to be better trained and to have, lay counselors to do this work, because of trauma. There's been research that says that simply being black in America, and certainly in Pittsburgh, which is the worst place in America for Black people, just being Black in Pittsburgh probably caused you psychological trauma. And so all of us are experiencing that trauma in different ways. And so we have to, I think, invest into more community-based counseling services. But again, all of those are symptoms of the real problem. The real problem is, because of institutional racism, money and resources are not directed inside our communities. And so we've allowed, because again, we've not put money into prevention programs, we've not put money into job training programs, we've not put money into a variety of these social service mental health programming to traumatize people so that they act out. And so the real solution is to put these comprehensive services. I think, a place like Larmer, where we've done that, where we've put new housing along with comprehensive wraparound services and better schools, then you see tremendous results in terms of the demographic statistics that are in those communities.
Yeah, it's hard to, on that same note, maybe a different note, it's hard to say we're the most livable city to live in the same breath say it's the worst city for African Americans to live in the country. And so we all should ask ourselves the question, wow, how can we be the most livable? And if we are the worst city for African Americans, what is our obligation to the Black Pittsburgh, Black Lives Matter Pittsburgh community to change that narrative? So our energy should be, that's not how I want us to be referenced in terms of the worst city for African Americans to live in. That will tie into mental health, that will tie into the budget from the police department, that will tie into budget to education, that will tie into access to technology and other resources. And again, we're about not to go back into the school system. Our children were already behind. It's a whole nother can of worms. How are we, the teachers have voted through the unions not to teach physically. And I know they need to be safe, but yet the energy is now poured on to after school programs and other entities to try to bridge the gap. And we're the same people. We're no safer than you are, but why should we go out there? But in spite of that, the Center That Cares is one organization like others who's trying to strategize how can we still educate our children who need basic education that they won't get online, they won't get at home because their parents and grandparents and aunties don't understand it, and they'll fall further and further into the gap, and who knows what will happen to them. And so the bigger picture is that, again, we have to not just address these real issues, if we're smacked with the face, we can't say we're the most livable if the same token, the same breath, is the worst place for African Americans.
Which to that point, Reverend Grayson, which is why we're here today, which is why we've been working on the various pieces of legislation, which is why we declared racism a public health crisis. We've created a commission on racial equity in this city. I hope we're going to be convening a task force soon to work on that commission. And I certainly hope you would, to the extent you can, because I know you're very busy, lend yourself to that effort as well. What I would like to do, because it's 7:15, and we did promise our guests that we would only have them for about an hour. And so we do need to let them go. Micah, if there are one or two final questions that sort of wrap up a number of people's questions, if we would do that, and then we can let
Yes. Someone asked how we can, Benita Jones asked how we can get more churches to collaborate in helping ex-offenders, and sort of reaching out to people who don't have the same online access. You also got a few comments saying that they appreciated not calling men and women inmates, but acknowledging them with love, and for making a way for accountability and accessibility during coronavirus.
Sorry, had some technical difficulties. I'm back though.
So on the church end, there are different city areas of church ministers who are doing great things. I will try to kind of share with a group of how we connect in a way that we kind of let people know what our various congregations and churches are doing, churches, imams, synagogues, and so forth, what we're doing in a way that can bless the community at large. We're out there and have always been out there making a difference, and sometimes it's not connected as well today. And so I will try to kind of connect a couple of the ministerial alliances that I'm a part of to kind of figure out how we get that message out better. Like my church every Friday since March have given out 180 boxes of food every week. But, there's no sign saying, this is what we do. We just simply do it. But every week for the last, I guess, 5 months, we have not missed a week giving out 180 boxes of food to the people in the community. And within an hour and 20 minutes, there's nothing left. But we're not the only church doing the same thing. Calvary's doing that. So many churches, Amy Zion, Methodist, Baptist, Pentecost, we're all out there in the work, and sometimes it gets missed, and sometimes we get beat up. So again, the work is great, and I would love to find a way that we can look at what some of our individual gifts and talents are in terms of ministry and tie that into some type of document that people can know who to reach out to.
And Reverend Grayson, I want to add to something that you said about how we just do the work. That's just the Black community in general. That's just Black people. We just do the work. We do what we're supposed to do. We make a way and we keep moving, and we're not stopping to think about who are we reporting the good works that we're doing to, or that we are doing. Where does that go? We're not stopping to think about how large our network is and how far we need to share this information and to who. We just see a need and we try to help to the best of our ability. So you're not alone in that. Your church is not alone. I think it's a community problem, if we want to say that it's a problem. People say we don't share information enough, we don't share resources enough, but we just help where we can, and whoever comes, they come, and there's usually not enough resources to go around.
I agree. Yeah. But on Friday, you'll see me 9 times out of 10 on that corner of Center and Francis, putting those boxes in people's cars. I don't mind it. That's what we do. We're hands-on, and I'm not solo. I did so many pastors, who work around the clock, impacting the lives of our community, both Black and white.
So I'm gonna ask one last question, then I'll let us go about our way. Reverend Grayson, earlier in this discussion, you mentioned a letter that you and many other pastors sent to the mayor. And Richard Garland, feel free to respond to this as well. But before you right now are 2 legislators, as well as the Assistant Director of Public Safety. in addition to what we're already working on and what we're attempting to accomplish as it relates to violence, as it relates to police interacting with our communities. If there's one ask or one recommendation that you would have for us, what might that be?
I don't know how to narrow it down to one, but we do want to, Black lives do matter. So we need to save lives on so many levels, on blue on black, but also on black, which we didn't touch at all. And so I think, and that ties into a lot of other dysfunctions that we just have to deal with. But the work is great. And so that's where my passion is personally with the loss of my son. And just as, you know, a trailblazer in this work, that's my passion in terms of how not do we only save lives, but make lives, give people the hope that everyone deserves for this American dream. I'm excited about I'll say publicly, the Biden-Harris ticket. And so let's vote, let's get our census done, let's do our part, and let's help change the narrative.
Okay, fair enough. With that, we are out of the time for today's show. I do want to thank our guest, Reverend Glenn Grayson, pastor of Wesley Center AME Church. And
AME Zion, y'all, come on.
AME Zion, I apologize.
All right, I let Reverend Virgil get away with AME Zion. Sorry.
In my mind, not my heart. So Reverend Glenn Grayson, pastor of Wesley Center AME Zion Church, and CEO of the Center That Cares. We have Shatira Murphy, the Assistant Director of Pittsburgh Public Safety Department, and we have with us Richard Garland, lecturer in the Public Health Department at the University of Pittsburgh. And I just want to thank you all for the time you spent with us and providing the wonderful insight that you did. As we move forward, in order to have significant investment in the Black community, it is imperative that we make the community safe and peaceful, and you all are on the front lines of doing that. Lastly, I just want to make sure everyone knows that as we do Black Pittsburgh Matters, that means we are committed to rebuilding Black communities in Pittsburgh for Black people, Black people, and with our partners and allies.
I want to thank all of you for watching and participating in this town hall meeting. Remember, you can watch this show on Facebook, the city's YouTube channel, or the city's cable channel. A new meeting will occur every Wednesday in August. Next week's meeting will focus on affordable housing and economic development in the Black community. By working together, united in purpose, we can transform our city, strengthen it for all of its residents. Pittsburgh can only be a city for all when it becomes a city where Black Pittsburgh matters. Stay safe and be blessed. Good night.
Thank you.